Well, it seems there's no end in sight. Let's begin. Well, the soap opera at GB News continues to provide us with more twists and turns and a roller coaster designed by a mad scientist. And GB News, once a bastion of free speech, appears to be evolving into some sort of authoritarian regime that punishes people for their thoughts faster than you can say George Orwell. And in this latest instalment of GB News: The Suspension Chronicles, we find ourselves in the midst of a perplexing drama where another one of their presenters has been suspended, and the reasons are about as clear as mud in a rainstorm. Now, of course, to probably try and appease the lefties on Twitter, or X as they now call it, GB News is swinging the axe like they're auditioning for a lumberjack role in the Monty Python sketch, and it lands squarely at Calvin Robinson's feet. But why, you ask? I mean, he had about as much to do with the Lawrence Fox interview as a penguin has to do with the desert survival. And his only crime, from what I can see, is that he dared to stand up for Wootton. And of course, who could have predicted that supporting a colleague would be a cardinal sin? And of course I don't know about you, but it's as if GB News is kind of saying, how dare you offer your opinion or support? So to me, if anything, it seems as if GB News has gone fast from a believer of free speech to some sort of dictator who punishes people for their thoughts faster than a snail on roller skates, possibly finding anyone they can throw under the bus even for the Lawrence Fox interview that the mainstream media is losing their collective crap over at the minute. And of course, the one I'm talking about, didn't you? The one where he basically said that he wouldn't have sex with a particular journalist. And admittedly, okay, yes, not in a very nice way. But of course that was generally the essence of it from what I saw. Of course, going along those lines, let's just hope that it doesn't come out that I definitely would not at all have sex with anyone like Vanessa Feltz, or who knows, I too might get cancelled before my channel grows to the size of my dick. But anyway, the article says that a post shared on X, formerly Twitter, Reverend Cameron Robinson wrote, "I have been suspended from GB News." A few hours prior to his post on the social media platform, Reverend Robinson announced that he would not be appearing on Wootton's GB News programme on Friday evening, saying that the presenter had a significant part to play in the building of GB News. Well, hold on to your wallets, because the taxman cometh, and he's not here for tea and biscuits. And that's because, according to the Institute for Financial Studies, the IFS, taxes could be on the verge of a grand resurgence, rising to a whopping 37% of our national income by the time of next year's election. And of course, I don't know about you, but I'm starting to think that the tax collector has developed a taste for caviar on our money. It's a blast from the past, my friends. A blast all the way back to the 1940s, the time before even flared jeans were in fashion, and taxes apparently knew how to throw a real party. But the thing is, no parliament since the Second World War has witnessed such a tax hike. It's like the tax god themselves decided, let's give them an historical tax increase to remember. That'll teach them. And speaking of memories, can you remember that time when we all wished for a decisive and permanent shift to a higher tax economy? No? Neither can I. But apparently that's what's happening, at least according to the IFS. They've even got a senior research economist named Ben Zalnico to proclaim, this parliament is destined for a tax-rising extravaganza. It's like predicting a blockbuster sequel that we never actually asked for or wanted. But here's the thing, this tax surge isn't merely a coincidence of the pandemic. No, of course not. It's a result of decisions to increase government spending. You see, it's all about demographic change, pressures on the health service, and the gentle unwinding of austerity, or so they want us to believe. It's like a complicated dance routine choreographed by economic wizards. Or bellends. You take your pick. But next year, our benevolent government plans to collect a mind-boggling £100 billion more in taxes compared to the carefree days of pre-2019. That's roughly £3,500 more per household. And you just love surprises, eh? But I'm guessing not that sort. And of course, in the spirit of fairness, this tax bonanza of course won't be shared equally, will it? It's like musical chairs, but with pounds and pence instead of chairs. And in the midst of this fiscal rollercoaster, we've got the ever-so-charming Liz Truss, who's apparently urging her successor to slash taxes. Let's cut them down to 19%, shall we? She suggests, as if she's arranging some sort of discount at a Black Friday sale. The thing is, though, the public needs tax cuts, not rises, especially in the middle of a cost of living crisis, where, let's face it, even supermarkets think that the prices can only go one way, especially as they've been raising their prices to pea-taken levels. But let's face it, if tax gets much higher, then they'll be more like the Labour Party than Labour themselves, won't they? But anyway, the article says that a significant number of Conservative MPs have also argued that keeping taxes at historically high levels, particularly given the cost of living, is a political mistake. However, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, who may or may not spell his name with a silent C, has warned cutting tax is virtually impossible, given the level of UK's long-term debt. The Chancellor has said that his autumn statement in November is likely to include even more Difficult decisions. I guess we all know what that means, don't we? Despite the shortfall in inflation, prices are still rising, and last month the Bank of England also kept interest rates at 5.25% after the 2 years of consecutive rising, meaning the cost of national borrowing did not increase as some had expected. However, Mr. Hunt said that the cost of servicing the country's debt remained higher than it was when he delivered his spring budget in March, meaning that there was no extra headroom for tax cuts. And of course I could be wrong, but what about that 12 billion extra pounds that you didn't realise you had from the pandemic, or so I heard? Well, what a world we live in, eh, where everything seems to rise quicker than I would if I saw Catherine Jenkins naked. I mean, let's face it, energy bills have been on the rollercoaster ride for nearly 2 years now, as only fitting they've decided to play a little game of yo-yo with our wallets. I mean, who needs stability, of course, when you can have the financial thrill of your lifetime, right? And what's the New Year's resolution of our beloved energy bills? Yes, that's right, you guessed it, they're gonna go up again. It's like they had a meeting and decided, let's start the year off by making everyone's lives a bit more financially miserable. Because let's face it, in the midst of a cost of living crisis, probably somewhere having a laugh at our expense, aren't they? But let's just delve a little bit into these juicy details, shall we? Apparently, annual energy bills for the average UK household are poised to rise by a cheeky £73 in January. What, you ask? Well, that's all thanks to those pesky wholesale energy prices, which seem to have taken a liking to the upward direction. Consultancy firm Cornwall Insight predicts that these bills could soar to a whopping £1,996, all neatly tucked under the official price cap set by the UK energy regulator Ofgem. But Dr. Craig Lowry, a principal consultant in the group, chimes in with a dash of dramatic flair. He tells us that although it's disappointing to see that the trend in energy bills falling over the past year seeming to stall, it's not wholly unexpected. Well, thanks very much, Dr. Lowry, for that enlightening revelation. It's almost like they're predicting the sun will rise in the east. Not exactly a groundbreaking revelation, is it? But the thing is, the price for a typical dual-fuel household is set to be £1,923 a year until December. That's down from £2,074 in the months from July to September. But don't drop the champagne just yet. It's still more than 50% higher than before Russia's invasion of Ukraine that apparently caused a global energy crisis. Standard charges have also ballooned from an average £186 a year in October 2021 to just over £300 a year. It's like the energy companies have decided to charge us rent for the privilege of having their services, isn't it? And of course, what do us public think about this? Well, a YouGov survey reveals that more than a third of British adults believe they'll struggle to pay energy bills this winter without help from the government. And therefore, of course, this is, if anything, kind of like a game of financial Jenga, and the tower is wobbling precariously. But fear not, don't worry, for there is a glimmer of hope on the horizon. A coalition of 140 organisations and MPs have called on Rishi Sunak, our unelected Prime Minister as I like to call him, to consider introducing a social tower for energy bills, a lifeline for those on low incomes. But will he do it? I've got a feeling he might not. But anyway, the article says that Chief Executive Jonathan Bailey said this means there should be no excuses for suppliers not to be doing all they can to support their customers this winter. And to reinforce this, we'll be introducing a customer code of conduct which we will be looking to have in place by the winter. Emily Seymour, Which Energy editor, said, even in this drop on prices from October, energy bills are significantly higher than they were before the energy crisis began, meaning some households will still struggle to afford their bill. And if you are concerned about struggling to pay your energy bills, there's apparently help available. Speak to your energy provider about a payment plan that you can afford and check to see if you qualify for any government schemes. They say we'd recommend that everyone without a smart meter takes a meter reading as soon as possible to make sure that energy company doesn't overcharge them for units used as the price drops. But also submitting meter readings on a regular basis is apparently a good idea, and make sure your bills are correct. And if that isn't bad enough, then in this video it seems like the police will soon be turning our cities into 1984 cities, if you know what I mean.